I'm Faiza Patel. I'm a lawyer. I work on counterterrorism issues. This is my life story. So I grew up in Pakistan, in Karachi, which is a big, bustling, dirty third world city. And I moved to Cambridge, where I went to Harvard for my undergraduate. I don't think I've necessarily had an incident of discrimination. But one thing I was thinking about is I lived in Europe for a long time, and there's certainly less sensitivity over there than there is here in the United States to issues of discrimination. And while I didn't have any overt issues with discrimination, there were certainly a lot of times when people were making comments or jokes that I found to be really inappropriate and offensive. So that was a slightly tricky thing to deal with. So Islamophobia is basically this view that the reason we have terrorism is because of Islam, that there's something fundamentally wrong with Islam, that it's not like the other Judeo-Christian religions in terms of having, elements that, if we look at them from a modern point of view, seem very retrograde, and having elements which are really humane and expansive. The problem is that this view permeates both our government and our society. And because it permeates our government, we often see programs that are aimed at communities at large, at religious communities and ethnic communities, rather that are focused on actually rooting out evidence of crime. We also see a great deal of employment discrimination increasing. We also see hate crimes, particularly violence in the aftermath of a terrorist attack. And I think the important thing to note is it's not just, Asian Americans who are Muslim who are subject to these attacks, right? Because people don't necessarily discriminate between one brown person and another. So we've certainly seen Hindus being attacked because they were thought to be Muslims, and Sikh Americans with their distinctive turbans have been a particular target of attack, such as the shooting at the Oak Creek Temple a few years ago. The disparate treatment between right-wing terrorism and terrorism that is carried out in the name of a group like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. And why do we treat them differently? Well, we treat them differently, I think, in part because we think of terrorism as being something foreign, right? We think it's something that comes from outside the United States and has sort of been brought to our borders by people who are different from the normal American. And that's just such a fallacy, because if you actually look at the statistics, there have been more fatalities from right-wing terrorism than from ISIS or Al-Qaeda terrorism in the United States since 9/11. So in fact, we should be treating both kinds of violence with the same kinds of attention and resources. I'm a lawyer. I work with other lawyers, right? So I work in this kind of bubble space, right? And I think I really began to understand the racial dynamics of the city when I started working on issues relating to the New York City Police Department, which was probably right around 2011 is when I really started intensifying my work on that. And that's the year in which the Associated Press broke a series of stories about the NYPD's Muslim surveillance program. And at that time, we started to really delve into sort of discrimination by the police. And those of us who were working on the Muslim surveillance issues started to link up with groups who were working on stop and frisk. And I think by talking to those groups and going to those meetings and organizing with them was when I really sort of started to understand, how directly biased policing actually affects individuals' lives. I think it's very easy in New York to live here and ignore all of that and live in your own bubble. But for me, that sort of fundamentally changed the way I view the city. I do what I do for two reasons. I left the United States in 1994 and moved to Europe. And I moved back after 2001, so after the 9/11 attacks. And when I moved back, I was kind of shocked because I didn't recognize the legal system that I had left behind. I felt that there was this huge change in sort of fundamental aspects of the system in terms of, non-discrimination, the protection of free speech, and the protection of religious rights. So when I saw that, I thought that was the most interesting thing going on over here, and I wanted to get involved in that. I think at the end of the day, my ultimate goal is to make sure that national security policies are both effective, but that they are also in line with our constitutional values and that they don't damage vulnerable communities.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.